They told her she couldn't be there. No badge. No wristband. No seat number. Just a mother, standing at the back of the school auditorium in a plain gray scarf, hands trembling, eyes locked on the stage. And that's when the first guard stepped in. Then the second. She didn't argue. She just looked down. And whispered something that no one heard. Until 6 men with eyes like steel and backs straight from war, walked in through the emergency exit and changed the fate of an entire neighborhood. This isn't just about a graduation. This is about a system. A hidden order disguised as your local HOA. And the silent war between control and sovereignty. Most men don't see it. They think the real war is overseas. But the real war is here. On your street. In your neighborhood. In the minutes between the mailman dropping a letter in your box. And you being fined $75 for your grass being 2 inches too tall. What you're about to hear will either wake you up. Or break you. Because this story doesn't start with a woman. It starts with a set of rules. Rules written 40 years ago by a man you've never met. Rules that say, your garage door must be closed between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. Your porch light must be 60 watts or less. Your fence must be painted HOA-approved taupe. Harmless, right? That's what they want you to believe. But every rule is a wire in the electric cage. That's why the guards didn't hesitate. She was non-compliant. Not because she was dangerous. But because she was unregistered. Unapproved. Unaffiliated. Unbranded. And when the 6 men walked in, they weren't in uniform. No patches. No medals. Just presence. Authority. Like they'd stepped out of a different world. Because they had. They weren't there to fight. They were there to remind. Remind the system. That freedom doesn't ask for permission. That blood runs deeper than policy. And that somewhere in the shadows of this suburban theater are men who still remember what real loyalty means. This wasn't about a graduation. It was a warning. To the HOA board. To the compliance officers. To every clipboard-holding enforcer hiding behind bylaws and meeting minutes. You thought you could remove a mother. But you triggered something older than your rules. You woke up something buried. You made a move. Now watch the whole game flip. Because this isn't just one story. It's the first crack in the wall. And what's behind it will change the way you see everything. Stay here. You're about to learn the truth. One rule at a time. Most men think freedom is loud. Flags waving. Fireworks bursting. Speeches booming. But real freedom? It's silent. It's the space between the rules. It's the ability to walk your land without looking over your shoulder. It's being able to build, fix, park, or plant without asking someone who's never spilled sweat on your soil. And that's why HOAs are dangerous. Not because they mow lawns or fix sidewalks. But because they sell you a dream with shackles stitched into the contract. You sign your deed, and give away your rights. Not all at once. Bit by bit. You think you own your home. But miss a payment? Break a rule? You'll find out who really owns what. And it starts so small. They call it community standards. They say, we're just here to protect property values. But tell me this. How does a flagpole threaten property values? How does a truck in your driveway devalue your neighbor's kitchen? It doesn't. Unless the goal is a property value. It's behavior control. See, the HOA doesn't knock on your door with rage. It knocks with a smile. With forms. With bylaws and friendly reminders. Until your identity bends. And you become a man who checks the rulebook before planting a tree. That's not community. That's conditioning. They want you polite. Obedient. Predictable. The perfect suburban subject. One who wears khakis on Thursdays, keeps his Christmas lights down by January 2nd. And never, ever, questions the letter in his mailbox. But here's the part they don't want you to know. The HOA doesn't exist to manage the neighborhood. It exists to own the narrative. When that woman showed up to her son's graduation without permission, she wasn't just breaking a rule. She was breaking the illusion. That order is perfect. That no one gets through the cracks. That everyone falls in line. They tried to remove her because she reminded them. There are still those who don't kneel. And the men who arrived after her. They weren't just veterans. They were reminders. That systems can break. That order can fall. And that no amount of red tape can stop a man who knows who he is. You feel it, don't you? That pressure in your chest? That itch in your mind? That's not paranoia. That's awareness. You're waking up. And once you see it, you can't go back. You'll start noticing. The surveillance disguised as safety. The fines disguised as compliance. The meetings where your voice is heard, but never recorded. And you'll ask yourself the same question every free man eventually faces. Is this home, or is it a prison made of stucco and smiles? Because the war isn't coming. It's already here. Hidden in plain sight. And the next time they come for someone, they may come for you. Let me tell you what most men never learn. Power doesn't scream. It whispers. It files paperwork. It wears a navy blue polo with a laminated badge that says Community Liaison. And when it knocks, it doesn't ask. It informs. You ever wonder why every HOA document reads like it was written in a different language? Legalese. Bylaws. Addendums. It's not incompetence. It's camouflage. They don't want you to understand. They want you to comply. It starts with a letter. Then a fee. Then a lien. And before you know it, you're standing on the front lawn of the home you own. Being told to remove your American flag because it's non-compliant with Height Code Section 14B. That's not oversight. That's occupation. And the worst part? You agreed to it. When you signed the deed, the papers, the welcome packet with a fake smile from someone named Linda, you signed away your sovereignty. Because in an HOA, you don't own your land. You lease your freedom under conditional civility. You get to pretend you're in control. Until you're not. Let me pull the curtain back further. These rules? They weren't written last year. They were inherited. From ancient codes, old world city structures, colonial models of control. They are spiritual descendants of systems designed to pacify, surveil, and subdue. The perfect mix of modern democracy and medieval feudalism. You're not a homeowner. You're a subject in a crownless kingdom. And the HOA board? They're not your neighbors. Not really. They're enforcers. Volunteers, yes, but drunk on limited power. And that's the most dangerous kind. Men who couldn't lead in war, couldn't command in business. But give them a clipboard and they'll wage holy war over a lawn gnome. These are the gatekeepers of the modern leash. Smiling tyrants in New Balance sneakers. And yet, they fear something. They fear men like you waking up. Men who no longer ask what's allowed, but ask what's true. Men who step outside the framework and begin to remember. That sovereignty isn't given. It's taken. That land can't be owned with paper. Only defended with presence. With principle. With the silent fire of a man who knows his soul doesn't answer to a monthly meeting. That's why they tried to erase her. The woman at the graduation. She didn't break a rule. She broke the illusion of control. And those seals? They didn't come to fight. They came to reveal. To stand. To say with silence. This far, and no further. You're not watching a video. You're standing at the edge of the system's map. Where they warn, in symbols and silence. Here there be monsters. And I'll ask you now. Are you still just a homeowner? Or have you become something else? Most men build their lives inside invisible fences. Not made of wood. Not made of wire. But rules. Expectations. Social contracts they never signed, just inherited. And the HOA? It's the perfect architect of that prison. It doesn't need guards. It has neighbors. It doesn't need guns. It has policy. And it doesn't need chains. Because it teaches you to chain yourself. You see a letter in your mailbox that says violation notice. And your heart skips a beat. You didn't commit a crime. You left your trash bin out too long. You parked too close to the curb. You painted your shutters gray instead of a proof slate. It's not about the rule. It's about the response. Fear. Obedience. Submission. And here's the brutal truth. That fear has been engineered. Tested. Refined. A psychological weapon wrapped in civility. HOAs don't just control the lawn. They control the mind. Through repetition. Through passive threats. Through the illusion that everyone else agrees. But let me ask you. Do they? Or have they just given up? Most men don't resist. Not because they agree. But because they don't know how. They've forgotten the language of resistance. Forgotten that saying no is a full sentence. That silence in the face of petty tyranny is complicity. But then, one day, someone says no. Like the woman in the scarf. No uniform. No permit. No assigned seat. Just a presence they couldn't file away. And the men who came after her. They weren't just veterans. They were echoes of a time before this system took root. Men forged in war, loyalty, blood, and silence. Men who don't flinch when confronted with petty power. They didn't sign the guest list. They didn't ask for clearance. They walked in like they owned the ground. Because men like that do. And when they arrived, everything changed. The guards stepped back. The auditorium fell silent. Because even the enforcers felt it. The shift. The presence of a different order. One not written in bylaws. But in sacrifice. In legacy. In blood. And now you're here, listening, watching, wondering. Why does this story feel like a mirror? Maybe because deep down, you've seen the signs. The smile that's a threat. The policy that's a leash. The rule that doesn't protect you. But binds you. And if you felt that, then this isn't just a story. It's a summons. You've lived under the surface long enough. Now it's time to come up for air. To remember what freedom actually feels like. So I'll ask you, right now. Drop into the comments and write this phrase. I am not property. I am not property. Write it twice. Not for me. For you. To mark the moment you stepped out of their game. And back into your name. It always starts the same way. You move in. You get the welcome packet. A smile from the neighbor next door. A friendly reminder about the next board meeting. You laugh. You settle in. You think you've arrived. But what you don't see, what they never show you, is the infrastructure beneath the niceness. The spine of surveillance. The hidden court where you're the defendant. And the verdict was written before you even unpacked the boxes. You ever ask yourself why the HOA board knows more about your habits than your friends do? They know when your lights go off. When your lawn gets mowed. What cars come and go. What you ordered from Amazon. How long it stayed on your porch. It's not neighborly concern. It's data collection. These systems weren't designed to keep the peace. They were designed to train obedience. To turn autonomy into routine. And routine into submission. But here's the deeper truth. The HOA is just the surface. Beneath it is an entire ecosystem of quiet domination. Law firms. Property management companies. Third-party enforcement contractors. Fines that get sold as debts to collectors. Collectors that place liens. Liens that lead to seizure. You think you own your home? They can take it. Over weeds. Over mailbox color. Over a late payment. And when they do, there's no headline. No protest. No camera crew. Just silence. And a new family, smiling at their dream house. Built on someone else's crushed sovereignty. This isn't management. It's a machine. A well-oiled mechanism of quiet compliance. And its most powerful weapon? Your neighbor. They deputize each other. Not through law. But through fear. Fear of being next. Fear of losing standing. Fear of social rejection. So instead of resisting, they report. I saw his garage open after hours. Their dog barked too long yesterday. Their grass was too high. Snitches in sandals. Judges with garden gloves. And you? You thought they were just being friendly. No. They were being conditioned. Same as you. And that's why when that woman walked into the graduation, she was radioactive. Unplugged. A signal of resistance in a controlled environment. She wasn't on the list. She didn't ask permission. And in that world, not asking is the ultimate sin. But when those 6 men walked in behind her, they broke the spell. Because they didn't bring violence. They brought authority. Not the kind you vote for. The kind that's earned in blood. The kind that needs no title. The kind that makes petty power retreat. And in that moment, something ancient cracked. Something programmed started to fail. Because this isn't just about rules. It's about control versus command. Compliance versus conviction. Regulation versus reality. And now you're starting to feel it. That maybe, just maybe, your house isn't a home. It's a test. And someone's been watching your answers. Somewhere along the line, we forgot. Forgot that a man's home used to be his fortress. Not a monitored asset inside a suburban simulation. We traded stone walls for vinyl siding. Guns for garage codes. Sovereignty for HOA newsletters. And we told ourselves it was progress. But behind every community improvement plan is a blueprint for domestication. Because they don't just want your cooperation. They want your identity. They want you predictable, quiet, smiling. The good citizen of a manicured matrix. And they've weaponized everything. Architecture. Lighting. Sidewalk width. Noise ordinances. Even the color of your mulch. This isn't regulation. This is ritual. Designed to turn instinct into habit. Masculine edge into neighborly neutrality. To break your wildness. And give you a patio grill in return. And if that sounds dramatic, good. You're finally beginning to see it. The HOA isn't a modern invention. It's the polished descendant of something ancient. A relic of imperial psychology. A mechanism to keep order when true kings were gone. Not through respect. Through compliance. Not through force. Through permission. And you? You've been programmed since move-in day. That welcome basket? It was your first offering. Those rule books? Your scriptures. That monthly fee? Your tithe. You've been living in a controlled faith. The cult of suburban conformity. And every time you adjusted to keep the peace, you sacrificed something. Pride. Power. Presence. Until one day you forgot who you were. But let me tell you something terrifying. They didn't. They still remember what a free man looks like. That's why they tried to erase her. The woman in the scarf. She wasn't a threat to safety. She was a threat to narrative. A reminder that some people still walk without shackles. And when those 6 walked in, unannounced, uninvited, unafraid, the entire auditorium held its breath. Not because they were dangerous, but because they were uncontrolled. Do you understand what that means? In a world engineered for obedience, being uncontrolled is the greatest threat of all. They didn't argue. They didn't push. They didn't raise their voices. They just stood. And the system folded in their shadow. Because real authority isn't enforced. It's felt. And in that moment, every HOA rulebook, every fine, every compliance officer, meant nothing. That auditorium became a battlefield. Not of violence, but of presence. And now, brother, you're standing at the same threshold. You've heard the knock. You've read the warnings. And still, you're here. Which means something inside you never died. It's just been waiting. For this story. This truth. This moment. Now the question isn't, what will they let me do? It's what will I no longer allow? They built this place to feel safe. But safety isn't peace. It's control. A padded cage lined with welcome mats, flower beds, and neighborhood watch signs that smile while they spy. The HOA doesn't care if you're good. It cares if you're contained. Orderly. Silent. Predictable. That's why they hate disruption. Not chaos. Disruption. The man who parks a non-approved truck on the driveway. The family who plants fruit trees instead of hedges. The mother who shows up without a name tag and refuses to leave. Because disruption reminds them. The control is fragile. It only works if you believe in it. And right now, something inside you is cracking. Not breaking. Cracking open. Like you're remembering a language you haven't spoken in years. The language of choice. Of force without violence. Of presence without permission. You've been asleep under fluorescent porch lights. Now you're waking up in the shadows of a system that counted on you never opening your eyes. But here's the part that chills most men to the bone. Once you wake up, you can't unsee it. You start noticing things. That the board president hasn't mowed his lawn once, but still finds others. That every meeting ends with nothing changing. That complaints are filtered. Votes are pre-decided. And the rules? The rules flex for the few. And crush the rest. You were told you had a voice. That you could vote. But what good is a vote in a game where the dice are loaded? And the map is rigged? Because that's the truth, brother. You were never meant to win. This system was never designed to serve you. It was built to shape you. To grind down your angles. To round off your edges. To file you into something they could manage. But you were not made to be manageable. You were made to command. And you felt that fire before. In traffic court. At your job. At the DMV. In every room where a little man behind a desk tried to shrink you. Into something polite. Contained. Compliant. You smiled. You nodded. But inside? You knew. You were never meant to live bent. You were built to stand. That's why this story matters. Because it's not just about one mother. Or 6 seals. Or an auditorium full of spectators. It's about you. What will you do? When your moment comes? When the clipboard shows up? When the violation notice arrives? When they tell you to sit down? Go home. Be quiet. Stay small. Will you ask what's allowed? Or will you decide what's right? Because that's the turning point. That's when men stop being spectators. And become something far more dangerous. Aware. The system survives on one thing. Your belief that it's legitimate. The moment that cracks. Even slightly. The entire structure begins to collapse. That's why they react so violently to small acts of defiance. A flag flown too high. A sign placed in a window. A family gathering that ends a little too loud, a little too late. Because the rules were never about protecting property. They were about protecting power. Understand this. The HOA doesn't enforce rules to keep things fair. It enforces rules to remind you who's in charge. And when they can't scare you, they isolate you. Turn the neighborhood against you. Whispers start. You're difficult. You don't respect the rules. You're not a team player. But isolation is just another tool. A test. They want to see if you'll break. If you'll fold. If you'll come crawling back to ask, what do I need to do to be left alone? But let me give you the truth they don't want you to hear. You are not meant to be left alone. You are meant to lead. Because when one man stands, really stands, 10 others remember how. And that terrifies them. Because control doesn't scale against awakening. One man with conviction is worth more than 1,000 with compromise. One mother in a scarf. 6 men who refused the program. An entire room frozen by presence, not force. Do you see it now? That wasn't a scene. It was a signal. To every HOA in every cul-de-sac. To every petty tyrant who ever hid behind procedure. To every system that thought it had you mapped, tamed, registered. It was a warning. You built this maze. But the lions have found the exits. And now the question becomes, what do you do with this clarity? Because once you see the bars, once you recognize the illusion, you can't go back to pretending it's a home. It's a territory. And every territory has 2 kinds of men. Those who defend it. And those who rent their place in it. You've been trained to be the latter. Trained to wait for approval. Trained to avoid attention. Trained to trade your instincts for HOA newsletters and holiday decorating contests. But instincts don't die. They sleep. And right now, they're waking up. That feeling in your gut? That burning behind your ribs? That's not anger. That's ancestry. Men long before you lived by a different code. Not written by boards. But carved in stone. In blood. In silence. Protect what's yours. Speak when it matters. Stand when others fold. You've been taught to fear conflict. But conflict is how the free declare their boundaries. So when the next violation letter arrives, don't just read it. Study it. Because hidden inside that page of rules is a map of how to break free. You want to know why they monitor you? Why they fine you for a flower bed that inches over the line, but ignore the board member who hasn't paid dues in 6 months? Because the rules aren't about justice. They're about hierarchy. It's not about what you did. It's about who you are in the chain. And most men live their entire lives trying to climb a ladder that leads to nothing. Because at the top of the HOA, there's no real throne. Just more rules. More meetings. More masks. It's not a power structure. It's a containment structure. Powerless people enforcing power on each other. To feel relevant. And if you felt like something is missing, that emptiness behind the promotions, the 2-car garage, the Instagram perfect family photos, you're right. Something is missing. Your fire. Your sovereignty. Because the system doesn't just restrict your actions. It siphons your energy. Your edge. Your wildness. It tells you, you've made it. But it keeps you just uncertain enough that you won't test the walls. You've been taught to fear your own instincts. To second-guess that voice that says, something's wrong. Something's off. That feeling in your chest. When you're told to move your truck. Because it doesn't match the aesthetic of the community. Let me say it plainly. That's not discomfort. That's your soul revolting. Because deep down, you know, you were not made to beg. Not for access. Not for peace. Not to exist in a place where your worth is judged by the length of your grass and the color of your shutters. You were made to rule your space. And this story, this woman at her son's graduation, isn't a footnote. It's a signal fire. She didn't yell. She didn't fight. She didn't plead. She simply refused to leave. And when the guards moved toward her, men moved around her. That's the moment they lost. Not because of violence, but because of alignment. Because when principle stands beside presence, systems tremble. And now I ask you, where are you standing? Not physically. Psychologically. Are you still on the porch, waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to be yourself? Or have you stepped inside your own house and reclaimed it as territory? Because the game is rigged until one man flips the board. And if you've listened this far, you're not just here for entertainment. You're here because you're on the edge of waking up, of remembering who you were before the paperwork buried you, before the fines, before the rules, before the cage made of politeness and patio furniture. Don't you dare look away now, because the final truth is coming. And after that, you'll never be the same. Now you know. This wasn't just a story about a mother or 6 men who walked into a room and made the system freeze. This was a mirror held up to you, to your life, to the quiet chains you've been dragging behind you, thinking they were part of the scenery. Let me speak to the man behind your eyes. The one who remembers silence before the noise. Who remembers walking the land barefoot. Who remembers ownership that wasn't printed on a deed, but burned into bloodline, into bone. The HOA didn't steal your freedom. You gave it. One concession at a time. For comfort. For calm. For the illusion of safety wrapped in newsletters and neighborhood BBQs. But safety isn't sacred. Sovereignty is. And now the system has a problem. Because you're aware. And an aware man is a dangerous man. Not because he destroys, but because he no longer asks. He no longer needs permission to speak, to stand, to protect, to plant a flag where his soul says, "This is mine." And now we reach the final door. And I won't lie to you. What's on the other side isn't easy. It's not a checklist. It's not a podcast. It's not a vote. It's a way of being. It's waking up and asking, what part of me still obeys without reason? What rule do I follow just to avoid discomfort? Where have I allowed paper to rule over principle? Because when you find that answer, you find your edge. And that edge is where men are forged. The world doesn't need more men with tidy lawns and perfect smiles. It needs men who remember how to lead without a license. How to protect without paperwork. How to walk into a room, say nothing, and still make the walls lean back in respect. That's who those 6 were. Not enforcers. Not rebels. Reminders. Reminders of what the system tried to erase. That we don't belong to them. We don't fit in boxes. We aren't code-compliant versions of manhood. We're the origin. And no HOA, no rulebook, no fine can bury a soul that's decided to awaken. So I'll leave you with this. Not as a farewell, but as a command. Build where they said you couldn't. Plant what they tried to uproot. Speak when they say be silent. Stand when they say sit. Because the battle is here. In your inbox. In your yard. In your mirror. And now, the warrior has returned. One last time, drop it in the comments to seal your transformation. I am not property. I am not property. Say it like you mean it. Say it like your future depends on it. Because it does. You just crossed the line. And from here on out, you don't walk with fear. You walk with fire.